this episode of Uncommon Philanthropist, we learn how delicious food can do more than just nourish the body, but also inspire hope. Chef Gary LeBlanc believes in the power of a delicious and healthy restaurant-quality meal to not only nourish the body, but also the soul for those impacted by disaster. Chef Gary is the CEO and founder of Mercy Chefs, an innovative nonprofit serving in the disaster recovery space to provide hope in a box and chef-quality meals to those impacted by natural disasters. The Uncommon Philanthropist had a chance to serve with Mercy Chefs in Asheville, North Carolina, following Hurricane Helene. The fun began in the parking lot and continued throughout the day. My husband, Bobby, quite the personal chef himself, was quick to volunteer for this assignment. In Asheville, Mercy Chefs had transformed a parking lot at a local church into a full-scale mobile commercial kitchen. The logistics of the Mercy Chef operation were quite impressive. Our assignment? Chopped sausage, lots of sausage, and then plate up food containers for our friends impacted by the storms. There were an estimated 40 volunteers serving in a number of roles, along with volunteer chefs and Mercy Chef staff. Not only was the food exceptional, but the volunteer experience so fun. Now to learn more about Mercy Chefs from founder Gary LeBlanc. For those watching in video, please know Chef Gary was unable to join the call by video. Instead, you'll enjoy a number of images provided courtesy of Mercy Chefs. Chef LeBlanc, welcome to the Uncommon Philanthropist.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, I can't imagine how busy you are, and I just want to thank you for your time and for being here and sharing a little bit more about your amazing organization and your call to start a nonprofit and your background as a chef. I could talk to you for a long time because food is love at our house, and I just really, really love what you're doing with Mercy Chefs. So really great work on that.
Well, thank you. It's been an incredible honor. You take something that you do that you've done to make a living, and then all of a sudden see a way that you can not just touch lives, but impact and change lives. It's nice to do it for money. It's nicer to do it as a calling.
For sure. Well, I would love to know just a little bit about your background as a chef before you started the ministry, and then how Katrina just really kind of changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've worked my whole career trying to stay out of kitchens. I started in the industry while working on my Bachelor of Science in Hotel, Restaurant, and Tourism at the University in New Orleans, and had to work while I was going into school, and just ended up in some of the best restaurants in the world with the most amazing chefs, and always spent time in the kitchen. So I'm on the job trained. I'm not classically trained, and that's a unique rise in the kitchen industry. But wherever I was, there'd always be a problem in food and beverage, and they'd be, oh, wait, Gary does food. And I'd get pulled out of a national sales manager job and thrown back in the kitchen, or pulled out of an assistant manager's position and thrown back in the kitchen. And so my whole career was spent working my way out of a kitchen, only to get thrown back in when there was a problem. It was very unique. So then I finally found myself as managing director of Hilton Hotel Group here in Virginia, and had people that did kitchens. So I had insulated myself pretty well. And that's when Katrina hit New Orleans. And the only thing I had that I could give to my people, to my family, to my town, was to go back and cook. And there I was back in the kitchen again, and everything that transpired there, and then the calling and the radical change in my life.
The organization is founded by you and your wife. Did you know immediately that a change had happened in your heart, that you had a better way to do food to people in disaster recovery areas? Let's talk a
I
little bit
knew,
about how the idea came
yeah,
about.
I knew immediately that there had been a change in my heart. There was a fracture. My heart was broken into a million pieces, and I realized God was going to put my heart back together differently than it was before. The
Oh,
whole concept of doing better food in a disaster developed over time. I got home after 2 weeks. I had worked with every other group that I could find, and as I got home and started thinking about it, I got angry about the food that I saw being served, the lack of sanitation, the challenges of working in a disaster area. And bless everybody that was doing everything they could down there. But I really thought there was a better way to do it. And that idea and that concept developed over the next 9 months, where I frankly wrestled with God. I don't want to do this. I don't want to receive this concept. I don't want to hear the idea. I've got a great life. I got a great plan. I'm strategic in my end goals. And it was 9 months after Katrina that I had the call to, it was very audible. It was very vivid. It was very clear. It was feed people, just go feed people. And it was in that moment that Mercy Chefs was born. And I had no idea what Mercy Chefs was going to be. I honestly thought it was going to be connecting my professional chef friends back with these other organizations and just being that sort of catalyst. And that was not the case. The other organizations I worked with, all the big organizations, some of the medium-sized organizations didn't want anything to do with it. Food is hard. Food is expensive, and they thought they were doing okay doing bad food. None of them wanted to act out the concept I had for better food in a disaster. So it became evident that if Mercy Chefs was going to be, it was going to happen independently, which in hindsight was just wisdom beyond my ability to realize that being independent and unaffiliated was the very best thing that it could be.
well, I've had a chance to see your operation, and I just could not believe it. When I walked on site and just saw the complexity of the operation and just the extent of your mobile kitchens and the organization of the food and the trucks and just how it all worked. I was like, how do you even begin to figure that out? And then just harnessing the volunteer labor and the expertise of chefs in the area. I just, whew, unwrapping that one was had to have kept you awake many, many
Right.
nights.
Honestly, we've evolved so much over the 18 years. I walk on site and I have the same feeling like, how does this really work? I don't know. It's too complex for me to conceive anymore. But it is an amazing thing. You go from an empty parking lot to a very finely tuned catering operation overnight. And um, yeah, our team does amazing work, and that has to come with a lot of professional acumen, but with a real passion, um,
Yes.
to be exceptional in the most difficult circumstances. I mean, we don't work out of easy circumstances. Our team has to endure quite a lot to make it happen, and without that passion and drive, it just couldn't be done.
Wow, it is
Um,
a serious call to do what you do and to be
oh,
running to the storms, when
yeah.
people are evacuating and fleeing, you're like the power guys, y'all are mobilized and there. And how quickly were you in Asheville, did you say?
Well, we were in Florida within 24 hours of landfall of Helene, and then we started hearing the damage that had very unexpectedly happen inland. And we immediately called up a second team, pulled in a full set of second equipment, and it took us a little over 2 days to get into Asheville, and then another half day to set up. But we got there as quickly as we could. I would have never expected 500 miles from landfall to see some of the worst damage that I've seen in 18 years. I'm still a little mystified by that. I mean, 500 miles away from the landfall, and this ranks in the very top of damage that I've seen.
Well, I appreciate you being on here. And to me, that is the challenge is how do you keep people interested and engaged after the storm, because our attention spans are so short. And Asheville and Western North Carolina, it's going to take, it's going to be years before they really are back. So, and I understand that part of your organization, you have the flexibility to do long-term food service through, I believe it's called Beacon of Hope. Is that correct?
Yes,
Tell me
yes.
about Beacon of Hope.
Well, it kind of happened as an accident. We were working in Panama City, Florida after Hurricane Michael. And we went back at Christmas, and then we were back at spring break helping feed public school kids that aren't free and reduced meals during spring break. And we thought we'd be feeding 500 to 800 kids a day. The second day we did 5,000, and it went up
Wow.
from there. And instead of staying for a week, we stayed for a month working out of the mobile kitchens. And it was a crushing need. Um, Talk about a storm that quickly fell out of the public eye.
Yes.
And finally, the school and the school system and the mayor came to us and said, "Look, we're going to have to feed all these kids again this summer, and we don't have the facilities that we used to have. We used to have 12 feeding sites. We're only going to be able to open 3 because of the damage here in town. Can you stay and help us feed the children and elderly?" And I said, "I can't do that out of a mobile kitchen. I mean, that's great for a short-term emergency, but you're asking for something more long-term. And I would need a sticks and bricks kitchen." And they smiled and said, "We already thought of that. We have a mothballed middle school. What if we just give you the school?" And so we were engaged there, and we stayed 2.5 years. We retrofitted the kitchen with big commercial pieces. We used the cafeteria as a community center. We converted classrooms into bunkhouses. So the volunteer teams had a very inexpensive place to stay. The folks coming in and doing blue tarps and mucking out and cleaning up yards, they could stay with us. And so we became this hub of relief, doing what we know how to do. We know hospitality, we know hotel, we know food, and we fed the community. We ended up feeding Head Start for 2 years in Panama City. And finally, they needed the building back to get it open as a school again. So after 2.5 years, we stepped aside. And then we did the same thing in Mayfield, Kentucky after the horrible tornado. And we stayed there 10 months in a school. So we are frantically looking in Asheville for a facility that we can recreate or do something very similar. We've demobilized our mobile kitchens. We have found a small kitchen that we're working out of now, but there's no lodging capability there. There's no public feeding opportunity there. It's just doing delivery meals, and we're restricted in capacity. So as the doors open, we're going to find that spot. I just believe we're going to have that perfect spot in Asheville. And you're right, it's not going to be months. It's going to be years, years, getting that part of the country back on their feet.
That I love that concept and that you're able to respond to the need and adapt accordingly. So let's talk about the quality of the food and your whole idea that you're not just providing nourishment, feeding body and soul.
Well,
Talk a little bit about that mindset.
yeah, well, amazing things happen when you share a meal with somebody. It's that whole art of breaking bread. We do it as family, we do it as friends, but we're doing it with people that have just had probably the worst day of their lives, and that's an obligation to do it the very best you can. Obviously, we don't serve Michelin 3-star meals in the field, but we want to serve the best meal that we can possibly serve that day in that moment with what we're working with. And that commitment is one of our non-negotiables. It's going to be high quality. It's going to be nutritious. It's going to be delicious. It's going to be handmade, and it's going to be chef prepared. I mean, we bake on site. All of our desserts are baked on site. We use all fresh ingredients. We hand cut salads. Our team is just consumed by doing incredible food, and to do it with love. And it's one thing to give somebody a plate of food that's going to keep them alive. It's another thing to share a meal with somebody that's going to feed their soul, that's going to remind them they're loved, they're not forgotten, they haven't been overlooked.
That's just so beautiful. So let's talk about the volunteer experience, because you are heavily dependent on volunteers to do what you do. Not only trained chefs, but you need people like me that, I know my way around the kitchen, but I'm not a chef by any means. So let's talk about the role of volunteers in Mercy Chefs and kind of the volunteer experience that somebody could expect.
That's our secret weapon are our volunteers. Not so secret, I guess. We look at the Green Beret model of a force multiplier: 12 Green Berets, 500 locals, and you have an army. And we do that same thing with volunteers and people in the community. We bring in our team. We're the 12 Green Berets, but those 500 locals are what makes it work. And our volunteer program is very robust. Our volunteer manager Molly does an incredible job.
She's awesome.
We're gonna make it fun. We're gonna make sure you have a good experience, and we're gonna work pretty hard. And it is the secret to what we do. And we also believe that neighbors helping neighbors is absolutely the best way to recovery. So we try to get our volunteers, people from the local community, out in those points of contact. I mean, we're going to be there for a time, but then we're going to be gone. But if we can connect the community with each other while we're there, then we've had an even greater impact. And we work very hard to do that. But you're going to dance. You're going to have a conga line. If you're washing dishes, we call it the bubble palace, and we have a bubble machine, and it's going to be a fun, engaging experience, and we're going to work very hard to create that community while we're there.
Well, the vibe was set in the parking lot. I could hear the music going, and it was a beautiful fall day in Asheville, and we were outside under the tents. And my husband is a big food guy, and he just he found his people there for sure. And Molly just, she made us do YMCA, and she made it such a joy-filled experience. And that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, The Uncommon Philanthropist, is to get people excited about volunteering and serving. I think for a lot of people, it's just outside their realm. They're busy and they don't realize what they're missing and how incredibly valuable their hands and their hearts are to, helping other people in need. But then you get that rebound effect where it just fills up your cup to be involved with something so much greater than ourselves.
It's an amazing thing when you go and give. We work so hard to take our treasure and invest it in a place where we can get a 6 or a 7% return. But if we take our hands and our time and we invest it in other human beings, you're going to get a tenfold return. I mean, who wouldn't do that with your treasure? So why not do that with your time?
That is so good. Well, tell me about your amazing wife and what gifts does she bring to the organization?
My wife is an organizer and a planner and just an administrative genius. But beyond all of that, her heart and her ability to hear from God are the most amazing things. You know, my call to ministry was audible, and I have people ask me all the time, "What did the voice sound like?" You know, and well, at the time it was booming and authoritative, but in the 18 years since, I've learned that it sounds amazingly like my wife Ann.
Oh,
And Anne just speaks with that kind of insight and authority. And she's been with me every step of the way. It's just been incredible for us to get to work together as well. It's one thing to be in a marriage and be in a partnership, and it's another thing to get to do life in engagement or enterprise like Mercy Chefs together. It's been the greatest joy I could ever think of.
wow. Well, that is so cool. Well, I know you're not on video, but I've got my Mercy Chef's volunteer shirt on.
I
I'm
see.
rocking. I'm rocking the my blue volunteer shirt, and
Love it.
another thing that I found very cool. I looked at like that board of where the big meals were going out. You know, we
Yeah.
packaged some up in single serving containers, and then there was also, you know, big. I don't even know what they're called. Platters of food going out to serve the other organizations, which I didn't realize that was part of kind of the mission, that you're not only feeding people who are coming by to pick up individual containers, but you're feeding a whole lot of other volunteer groups.
We can spread out so much more that way. I mean, our team can outcook a site. I mean, we can't get enough people to come and take the food that we can cook. So we use the hub and spoke model. And there in Asheville, we were sending food out on any given day to 12 or 15 different locations in the mountains, in the cuts, and the hollows, up where the incredible damage was. And so we were able to spread out our impact over about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 30-minute circle around Asheville. We use great hot boxes and insulated bags, and we're able to safely transport anywhere we can get to within 2.5 hours. We had that model a little smaller there in Asheville. Um, yeah, you can reach out. And again, it's that helping neighbor model. If we can send 400 meals, lunch and dinner to a little church up in one of the cuts that got washed out, that church is taking care of their neighbors. And we're just doing the heavy lifting, providing those beautiful meals for them to serve.
The next day after we served at Mercy Chefs, we were with Team Rubicon, and they were at the Veterans Restoration Quarters, which I don't know if you've heard the story about that property, but it's an old hotel that's been converted to housing for homeless veterans. And it's on the Swananoa River, and it just got wiped out. The building's still standing, but the interior's totally gutted. So that was, it was cool to see you guys serving, you know, the veterans serving there and the people impacted that. So
We're,
just
we're
the
still
impact
serving,
you're
we're still
having is
serving,
tremendous.
we're still serving that veterans population. They moved them into hotels in Asheville with
Okay.
no food service capacity while they rebuild there. And we are feeding them at those hotels every day. That was our big rush to get into this smaller space. It's like if we can't serve everybody that we were serving before, we're going to pick the most vulnerable, the most at risk, the most worthy. So we still feed those veterans every day.
That makes me so happy. They need all the love and support we can get to get that facility back operational. Okay, Chef Gary, one last thing. So I close these episodes. My tagline is let go, meaning open your hands and let's go serve, let's volunteer. So I would love for you to kind of give a shout out, let go. And what does that mean to you?
Well, to me, it means you can't receive something new if you're already holding something. Your hands have to be empty and open to receive. And so just giving out fully, you know, the storehouse isn't about what you can bring in. I think the storehouse is about what you can give out. And so, yeah, that's my take on that. Is whatever we have, we need to be giving away so we can receive more.
Very go. And there's joy in doing that. Thank you for listening to your heart, listening to that audible call from God to feed those people and to do it with love. I had one of the meals, and it was Cajun rice and sausage and a beautiful coleslaw and an unbelievable brownie
Yeah.
prepared by this local dessert expert. It was, I will always remember that meal and that experience with Mercy Chef. So thank you for what you do, and keep up the amazing work.
Thank you.
Okay. Talk soon, Chef Gary.
All righty. Bye-bye.